Guys, this video is sponsored by letsgetchecked.com. In case you're wondering, this is how I check my testosterone levels. And yes, they're still much higher than the average man. There's many good reasons to get your testosterone levels checked, and the easiest way to do it is with Let's Get Checked. Let's Get Checked manufactures their sample collection kits at their accredited facility. Your samples will be processed by their network of highly accredited, best-in-class laboratories, and there's a team of physicians to review your results. Here's how it works. Choose from a wide range of tests to cover your health needs. Order with next-day delivery and avoid sitting in a doctor's office. Activate your test and collect your sample in the morning and return the same day using the prepaid shipping label provided. Once your sample arrives to the lab, confidential results will be available from a secure online account within 2 to 5 days. With over 2 million tests performed and over 127,000 infections detected, you can take control of your health today by visiting letsgetchecked.com. Promo code Chael30 will save you 30%. You can also order a free test with the promo code in the description below to test out their service for yourself. Jon Jones has blocked me on Twitter. How did we get here, you might ask? Okay, you know what? Let me think. Let me think how we got here. The first time I ever met Jon Jones, we were at a hotel in Las Vegas. I was with Matt Lindland. Matt and I had just finished a training session. There was a hot tub outside, and it was raised up. I mean, we were like 30 floors up. This was one of the great hot tubs. You could sit in a hot tub and see a view. Anyway, Matt and I finished our workout by dunking in there. There's a long, lanky kid. He introduces himself. His name's Jon Jones, and he says, I'm thinking about getting into this. 19, 20-year-old guy. Couldn't have been nicer. I actually brought that up to Jon Jones one time. He didn't remember it. He didn't remember us meeting there. But that's the first time I've ever met him. Next thing I know, I'm in some kind of a dust-up with Jon. And it was a little bit of a smile and a wink. There was a show called UFC Tonight. I was the number one contender, 185 pounds, but I was the number one contender. And I went on the show and I said, I am the number one contender, but I have not chosen at what weight class yet. And if I was George St. Pierre or Jon Jones, I'd be swallowing real deep right about now. That's a quote. Now, of course, I'm getting ready. I'm in my Henderson phase. I know what I'm doing, but I'm going after these two guys because they got good names. So I see Jon backstage in an event, dressed up. I want to say he was the commentary for the Fox team that night. But he was dressed up in a suit, and I passed him, and he stops me. He goes, "Hey, Chael, do I really need to be swallowing deep right about now?" And I said something. It was friendly. I said something like, yeah, you should. He smiled, and he goes off and does his job. I go about my day. I don't have any interaction with Jon Jones for a period of time after that. And the next thing you know, I'm a light heavyweight. I'm in the weight class. I'm not the number one contender. Go back on this show, UFC Tonight, and I dismissed Jon. I dismissed him. It was in October at some point, and I said I could take his belt like pushing a kid down on Halloween and taking his candy, but I'm not interested in him. Now, this is all that I've said about Jon, but his feathers were up, and you got to understand why that might be commonplace right now in the sport. I hadn't started. I hadn't gotten this whole thing going yet, right? This was a real shot, as light as that might be. Push him down and take his candy. I could take his belt like I could push him down and take his candy. Because he was young. Don't forget, Jon was the youngest champion of all time. He's like 21, 22 years old. So I'm dismissing his youth. It's lighthearted. It's not all that big of a deal. But it's what got everything started. That bothered him. And all of a sudden, I'm in the division. So who's going to fight Jon? Where do I play into this? My teammate Dan Henderson is going to fight Jon Jones. My teammate gets hurt. I get a call on short notice. Fight gets made. It's going to be called UFC 151. Off you go. I never would have had a title fight. Never even would have pretended for you guys that I deserved one. I hadn't fought in the division. I get it. A lot of studs in there. Gustafsson was in there, and Henderson was. I'm trying to think of the top guys at that time. I'm having to go back. Good fighters. DC was flirting with coming to the division. Maybe he'd already entered it. Rashad was in there. Good fighters. So because Jon refused to fight me, and Jon refused to fight me because it was short notice and I was a southpaw, he believed that because Dan Henderson and I were such good friends and training partners, that I knew for a meaningful period of time and had been preparing for him, and that Dan and I had concocted a scenario where we know I'm going in, but we're going to wait till the absolute last minute for Dan to pull out so that the UFC has nobody else to put in, and that would increase my chances of getting this fight, of which I knew about and I've been preparing for. Now, he's not totally wrong to come up with that conspiracy. I mean, that is a fathomable and possible. I will just share with you that just didn't happen. In fact, I didn't even train with Dan for that camp. He was in California. He was in California. I'm out here in Oregon. That just didn't happen. But because Jon refused the fight, that built the interest in the fight. And Jon's coach was very helpful, Greg Jackson. Greg Jackson came out publicly and spoke on it and said Jon accepting that fight with Chael on 8 days' notice would be the biggest mistake of his career. Now, in the world of street cred, I just got it. And I knew how I was feeling at that time. And I knew with age, and I knew with some of my experiences, and I knew never being in 205 pounds, I was not as confident inside as I'm coming out saying that I could push this kid down and take his candy, right? Take his belt like I would a kid on Halloween with his candy. I didn't have that same confidence, but apparently I sold it pretty well. Apparently I presented it that I did, because it got a lot of attention. So I concocted a plan. You haven't heard this story before because I've never told you guys this story. I concocted my own plan to get this fight. Because when I didn't get it, Jon's next fight ended up being against Vitor Belfort. I wanted that fight, and I fought for it. I lost, right? I'm behind the scenes. I fought for that fight. I lost out to Vitor. And so now I'm really putting a plan together. I'm never going to lose again, particularly in the bureaucracy and the politics of this sport, which I understand better than anybody. I'll never get beat again. So I put my plan together. I make my moves. And a big part of my plan actually had to do with an executive at a company called FX. FX was hosting the Ultimate Fighter at that time. Ultimate Fighter being the biggest vehicle in the sport at that time, may still be, definitely was back then. Generally had championship matches if they could get them. And I knew that they had an interest in me. So my way of getting this fight didn't have to do with the media. It didn't have to do with heckling or calling out or getting the interest of Jon. And it didn't even have to do with going to and asking or begging of Dana. I met this executive. And I knew when I met this gal, we had made conversation, and she said, I actually work for FX, and I actually oversee the Ultimate Fighter. Boom, here's how I'm going to get in. I'm going to impress her quietly. Never told you guys this story. I'm going to quietly impress her. I'm going to try to make her think I'm interesting. I'm going to charming, a guy that belongs on TV. That's what I'm going to do, because if I do, and she makes the phone call, we want him on the Ultimate Fighter, I have a good chance that it's going to be opposite Jon. Boom, there's my title opportunity. So my plan is hatched. I move forward with it. It worked. She liked me. Okay. Told you there's politics in the sport, right? There's always a game being played. How well are you going to play it? It works. She wants me on the Ultimate Fighter. Now, she doesn't know I got this heat with Jon Jones and the title, and she wants me on the Ultimate Fighter. Who am I going to go against? All right, great. End up going against Jon. Now, I don't know anything about this. I was having lunch with a friend. I left my phone in the car. I come back to my phone, and I'm lit up. My phone is going crazy, but one of them was Kevin Iole. And Kevin Iole is telling me that I am going to be on the Ultimate Fighter and I'm going to fight Jon Jones for the World Championship. I don't know any of these things. So I'm saying, Kevin, what are you talking about? What's your source? He said, what's my source? Dana just announced it to the press. He hadn't told me. I didn't know. So I'm celebrating. Yes, I wanted to fight Jon. I thought I could beat this guy. Want to fight for a championship. I wanted to do the Ultimate Fighter, right? Everything's going old Chael's way. And my plan worked. Couldn't be proud of myself. I have one of these moments. I'm just sharing this backstory with you guys now. So we go to the Ultimate Fighter. I had a lot of good moments with Jon. Like, we went into that thing pretty hot towards each other. Now we're finally around each other. And the heat cooled pretty quickly. Like, he was just a regular guy, and I think he saw that I was a regular guy, and he was really good at what he did, and he saw that I worked hard and wanted to be really good at what I did. There's just a respect there. So the fight happens, Jon wins, and everything's cool in the gang. It's behind us. It's the way it goes. Shake hands and walk away. Sometimes that's easier said than done. In this case, it happened. Somewhere along the way, Jon starts taking shots at me for PEDs. Now, I fought him. I know his secret. I was willing to keep his secret. It was honor amongst thieves, right? But when he started publicly speaking about it, I was a little bit bothered, and he was taking that real high-handed approach, that real how could you type mentality, and he went a little far with it. And you'll always know a fellow user. You can just look at them. There's things that it happens to your body that only you know once you're doing it. So when you spot somebody else, you always know. But you can also get a very good indicator by some of their interviews, right? By some of the interviews with the great denials when they're never being asked. I mean, this is a rule amongst the FBI. The FBI will tell you if they bring somebody in that they have a suspect and that guy offers his alibi before they ever asked for it, they got their man. If a guy ever comes in and goes, couldn't have been me, I was at the such and such. As a matter of fact, here's a receipt. Why would you possibly have a receipt? And why would you possibly offer it to us before we even asked you? You got your guy. So when Jon was doing some of this stuff, it bothered me, but I still kept my mouth shut. I never said anything about it. And he started throwing some real stones my way. I let it go. And I thought it was a little bit underhanded only because if we're in the spirit of keeping each other's names out there because we're going to go do business and we're going to be partners together, fair game. That's behind us. We're not going to do that. There was a time and a place you could have done that, but we're not there anymore. Why are you doing that when you're much more guilty than me? Okay. Kept my mouth shut. Never said anything about it. He finally gets hit. And when he gets hit, it's one of these things where what took you so long? And instead of copping to it, he takes the other approach. And you only have two options. Come as clean as you can, as quickly as you can, or take it to the grave with denial. There's no in between. And once you make your play, you got to stand on it. He made his play. I'm taking this thing to the grave. So now I'm speaking up, right? Now it's payback time. All the stuff you said about me. So we're having a little back and forth. And it wasn't much more heated than what I'm speaking right now. I just said my piece about what he was doing, how long he had been doing it. He'd fought OSP. It was the one fight where he fought clean. It was the worst performance he had. All due respect to Jon, in the worst performance he ever had, he won every single round. But it looked like a different Jon because it was. He then ends up in the Picogram dispute. So now that I've come at him, even though he did it first, he didn't look at it that way. Well, everything Chael said about me, I said about him, and I went first. Instead of looking at it like that, he just thought I was wrong, which also pissed me off, right? There's a code even when you're fighting. Even when you're fighting, you have to be objective enough to know, did you say these same things and who did it first? If you went first, you can't be mad at the guy that did the same thing except he did it second. No honor. Dirty fighter. He had no honor. So the Picogram happens. And the Picogram was one of the great swerves in recent memory because the question was this: would a Picogram help Jon? The answer to the question by all of the experts, which weighed in to get Jon licensed, was no. That's the correct answer. A picogram of that steroid would not help Jon. That's true. That never should have been the question. Here's how steroids work, just so you guys understand. Okay, performance enhancers. You put them into your system. They're in your system. They start to go away. So you take more. They start to go away. So you take more. They start to go away. It's called a cycle. Now, you will have benefits as long as it's in your system, no matter how low. Once it's completely out of your system, you will have benefits for up to 6 months. No less than 4, but up to 6 months. So when they asked would a picogram of this substance help Jon, and the answer from the experts came back no, the experts knew the truth. The experts knew that's not the question that should be asked. Does a picogram left help you? Yes. Heavens, yes. Not even a maybe. Once you're at no grams, you still have 4 to 6 months. Okay. I explained this accurately. Everything I just said is extremely accurate. Jon didn't like that, right? Jon decided to be upset by this. So Jon comes on one time, and Ariel and I are going to conduct an interview. And Jon, while live, refuses to speak to me. Okay. That could have been very bad for me. It wasn't. It could have been. Why am I there? Why would the network have me there if an athlete isn't going to talk to me? Do you see the problem? Now, the network defended me. I ended up being okay. But it's the thought that counts. And he knew what his intent was. And his intent was very damaging. You come after a guy's livelihood, it's very different than you do a little back and forth about, who did what and what secrets do you know. It's very different. Dirty fighter. That's a dirty move. You do not do that. And I did not do that to him. I never even spoke up on the Picogram debacle and the swerve of the question of, does this help you, as opposed to remaining help you, until he had his license. I didn't say one word until it was done and he was free to fight. But he came after me. He may not see it the way I just said it. Everything I just said happened. Some of that is my interpretation. That's fair. So we get in this back and forth and it never ends. And it was one of these things where you can refuse to talk to me today. You fight twice a year. You're going to be invited here twice a year. I'm going to be here every week. So do you think it's a good idea to get into it knowing that? And now I've lost respect for him, right? Now you're just a dum-dum. In addition to everything else, now you're a dum-dum. Now I'm frustrated, right? I mean, this is how we got here. Why do I keep going after him? This is how we got here. He went first. I went second. We can be done. Nope. He went third. Okay, great. I'll go fourth. We can be done. Nope. He came back fifth. And so it keeps getting pinged back and forth. And for a meaningful period of time, I have waited to go last, have the final say. He shuts up and we're all done here. But he always gives me just enough. He always comes back in some way. So how do I interpret Jon blocking me? How does one of the toughest guys in the world be so sensitive that letters on Twitter from total strangers change his day, whether he's having a positive day or a negative day? And I can associate myself into this one too, right? When he refused to fight me, publicly refused. And as he's starting to give in because we're going to go do the Ultimate Fighter, he actually sent out a tweet and said, I'm starting to change my mind. Maybe I will give this guy a beating. What do you guys think? ? Now, with all due respect, I will never ask you what you think because I don't need your opinion. I've already got it figured out. You don't come to me for a back and forth. You come to me to tell you the final say because it stops with me. And this little insecure champion of the world needed the opinion of the public because somewhere along the way he said he wasn't going to do something that he now finds out is a really good idea to go and do. I don't ask you your opinion. You ever been in that spot? You ever been a kid? You get in trouble at school, principal brings you in. Principal says, what do you think we should do with you? I don't ask my kids that. I don't ask them what I should do. I already got it figured out.